Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, and you are listening to the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories of hope and generosity in our wonderful community of Newberg, Oregon, and the surrounding area. This podcast is sponsored by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group, and we are licensed real estate brokers with Premier Property Group, LLC. We're passionate about serving our clients well and educating people about the many aspects of real estate and Newberg. And if that's something you're interested in, you can check out our YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below. Well, we covered a lot of great stuff on this episode, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So here's my conversation with Kathie. Hey everyone, I am here with Kathie Byers, who is a beloved member of our community. She is the Community Impact Coordinator at First Federal here in town. She is also a member of the Newberg Noon Rotary Club, and she's also just a lovely person to be around. Actually, also the co-owner of Glory Cookies, which if you haven't heard of or tried Glory Cookies, you need to. So just a little plug for that. But Kathie's one of those people who always just steps up and does what is needed to be done here in town and is the perfect candidate for the type of person I want to bring to you on this show. So Kathie, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Daniel. That was quite an intro.
So there's a couple of reasons why I'd reached out to Kathie to be on the podcast. One, I've just known her for a while and known that she's an amazing person. But there's a couple specific reasons that I thought she'd be a good fit. So two of those we're going to get into. One is just what you do with First Federal and how that bank does things a little bit differently when it comes to community involvement. And also there was a thing with the Christmas tree lighting that happened last year that probably wouldn't have happened without you. So we're going to get into both of those things today. But the first thing that the theme of this episode is going to be about is what does it look like for businesses to be involved, and why should small businesses be involved? So this is something that First Federal, and when did you join First Federal?
2019.
2019.
March of 2019.
So for the past 3 years, you've kind of been inundated with that model. And
yes. And I've also been a customer for over 30 years, I believe 33 years. And I've always loved First Federal and have never been tempted to leave because of their community mindedness. So
First Federal has been around for 100 years. You just celebrated 100 years this year.
Yes.
And it was in 1999 when they kind of went all in on this community involvement model.
Exactly.
So what led to them going from just being a normal bank to taking a deeper dive into community involvement?
Well, they were formed with the idea of being a community bank, a savings and loan community bank. And I can only infer from sort of the historical documents that I've read that in 1999, my words would be that they made a conscious effort to become very steeped in the community and known for their community giving. And so they actually created a very generous budget and have stuck with that budget since 1999. And there were a couple of years where I think maybe all of the programs were halted because of a serious financial recession, because they are still a bank and have to be conservative when it comes to other people's money. But they resumed it as soon as they were able to. And the budget has only increased. You know, they've never retracted the amount that they've given.
So what about that model specifically drew you to go from being just a member of the bank to actually saying, this is something I want to be involved in at the point of being the community impact coordinator?
So first of all, I come from a nonprofit background. I managed a nonprofit for 27 years in Sheridan that focused on positive youth development. So I understood the side of the fence where you're asking for money. And I have always admired First Federal and how easy it is to come to them and ask for assistance if you're an established nonprofit. I mean, they definitely have a vetting system, and the great thing about their giving programs is because they only focus on Yamhill County, we know all of the nonprofits. My predecessor, Pam Watts, was equally involved in the community and equally beloved. And we have a very close relationship with a lot of the nonprofits throughout Yamhill County. And so you just sort of, you know what the need is, and it's easy for nonprofits to approach us and ask for assistance. And if we can do it, we do.
Yeah. So what are some of the examples that giving looks like from First Federal?
So we have a grant program. We have a community rewards program, which is one of my favorites because I really believe strongly in working for what you need. And so community rewards is people volunteering for local nonprofits, and then First Federal will pay $2 per hour. And the condition is that you do have to be a First Federal customer. So, but if you're a customer and you submit your volunteer hours, we pay $2 per hour to that nonprofit. So Love Inc., for example. Yeah. If they have 4 or 5 First Federal customers and they volunteer 20 hours in a week, then the director would submit a time card to me, and we would pay $40.
So the volunteer themselves has to be the customer. Gotcha. Okay.
That is correct. Yes. The nonprofit does not have to be a customer. Okay. Yes. So this year, the program's actually coming to a close right now, and we have had 58 nonprofit organizations submit hours.
Wow. So what does that look like just in terms of, I don't know if you can share kind of the numbers of overall, how much has been contributed to nonprofits?
Overall, from the beginning of
just like
the
for this
giving
year.
program. For this year, so we give away, just in cash, we give away about $200,000 a year. In kind, we give away over $400,000 a year. I think over $400,000 between our volunteer time, and each employee can get paid 8 hours of volunteer service. Okay. And then we allow nonprofit organizations, to use our community rooms if we have them in the 6 locations that we have. And total, since 1999, we've given away $3.5 million to Yamhill County nonprofits.
And so some people might say, wow, that's great for a bank who has a ton of money. But how would you say from the beginning, because I know it wasn't $3.5 million the first year, you said it's something that's grown over time. Mm-hmm. So I imagine it's something that they did not just because it's like, oh, well, let's see what we can get out of this, but there was that heart behind being a community bank, a community organization. And especially in a small town like this, I imagine people make different business choices based on community impact. Have you seen that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, who doesn't hear that an organization, a business is community minded, and you're going to pick that business? Obviously, you still have to provide a good product, excellent customer service, but the community involvement gives you that leg up, that little competitive edge. But what I truly love about First Federal, and you can have a perspective when you're on the outside, like when I was a customer or just someone living in Yamhill County, and I always admired First Federal, always loved the people that I interacted with when I came in to do business. But now that I'm on the inside, I can honestly tell you that the heart of the company, from leadership down, is community service. And the good majority of our workforce give back within their own communities as well. They're coaching. They are involved in their kids' schools and their churches and serving on boards within their community. So it seems to be a really marvelous culture that they have created, and they encourage community involvement. Yeah. And that is really a beautiful thing. And it comes from the heart. I actually really believe that it's because we all live here. and work here and raise our families here. And so it's just natural that we would want to give back and make it a better place.
So for businesses who have a heart to give back, but maybe don't have huge budgets, what would you say to them? Because obviously not everyone has huge budgets, but may want to give back and still be involved.
Yeah, especially the startup companies. I can attest that it's difficult to give as much as you are asked to give. But I think just giving in kind is a good way to start. If you have the ability to serve on a board, or even just to volunteer at an event, old-fashioned festival, or get involved with a local civil group, whether it's Rotary or Kiwanis, Chamber. All of those organizations really exist to bring community service. And so, give an hour of your time each week to attend the meetings. And then even if you limit it to just say, I'm going to help with one activity a year. And there are lots of opportunities here in Newberg to give a little bit of your time and make life better for someone else. Yeah.
And that's why I call this the giving town. Most people think money, but it's really, there's many ways to give.
Yes.
And that's something I've experienced personally is, okay, sometimes money isn't always an option to give a significant amount of money, but there are things, everyone has special gifts and talents. I still think money is important when you can. There's a lot of science that backs up at least giving, if you give at least 10% of your income to a good cause, that it actually, people actually live longer. There's a lot of psychological and physiological benefits that seem to make no sense. And it's also very intuitively backwards, but it's just kind of interesting. So I do think monetary giving is important, but it's not the only thing that's important. There's all kinds of giving, like what you said. And we also had talked before we started recording just about the importance of businesses, for-profit businesses being involved. It's not like we often think of, okay, there's those businesses that are for-profit, and then over here there's the nonprofits, and they're kind of separated, but really there needs to be a joint effort between the two, and each one can't really thrive and succeed without the other. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's true. I've really come to have a philosophy or belief, realization that you can't have a healthy community if you're able to give back to the people, to the most needy in your community. You're only creating a more healthy environment for your business. It's like your business depends on your community being healthy. And just like if you're trying to grow a garden, you've got to plant the seed, you've got to water it, you've got to keep the weeds away. Well, having a thriving business is much the same way. Communities aren't going to grow and thrive if the businesses that are thriving the most do not give back to their community. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think Newberg is a really good example of that. There are so many businesses that give back. And I think it's fun for me to be able to highlight that and hopefully inspire more people to do the same, because many people are humble and don't want to talk about it. And
exactly.
I think First Federal does a good job of being out there and present and supports a lot of things and has their banners up. But there are many who give quietly behind the scenes that I've learned about, and I'm shocked because I've thought, wow, I had no clue what certain businesses do and are part of. So hopefully I'll be able to get some of them on here and get their stories told, but some don't want their story told because they just want to do it in secret. But I think it's important for people to recognize the town we live in, the culture that actually is here, because it's so easy to focus on the negative things that happen. And because there's always going to be bad, there's always going to be good. And the unfortunate thing is the bad often gets talked about louder than the good.
Yes.
It's actually, even if it's a minority of the actual reality of what's happening in the culture, it's just the louder voice. So I'm trying to be a louder voice, and I appreciate you sharing about the heart behind what you do. It's not in some ways it is a business decision of, okay, well, if we kind of think long term, maybe people will be more likely to do business with us. But it's not just about that. It's not, okay, what's the minimum number we can give to maximize the amount of customers we get, but it's just, you kind of operate almost in like a sense of faith. Like, we're going to do this and trust that people are going to respond to it. And we may or may not get an actual return, but if we can thrive and do well and also help our community thrive, that's what seems to drive it.
Yeah, I think it's important, you set a budget that you can operate within, and you have your focus that you want to focus your efforts on, whether that's education or veterans or homelessness. You pick where your heart is, what, the needs that you have a heart for, and then you set a budget and you stick with that. And hopefully your budget will grow each year because you'll notice that your revenues are growing. Yeah.
What are some things that obviously you haven't been with First Federal from the very beginning, but what are some lessons that from the time you've been there, also from the stories you've heard about how to give effectively and actually make an impact with your giving?
I think I kind of answered that with my previous comments, but it's really setting a budget, having a focused area of giving, because we're pretty fortunate that we do get a lot of requests throughout the year, and we can meet most of those requests. We can't give 100% that's asked for every time, but we can at least do a little something. So we're fortunate that we have a budget that can handle that. But so set a budget, establish the areas where you want to make a difference. And I do know that First Federal has changed those areas of focus. It's great that the board, the leadership, and the staff are all in the community, and we all kind of have a pulse on what the need is. So those areas of focus have changed occasionally over the year. We seem to have always focused on youth and youth education and youth sports and food banks, things like that. So, sorry, I got a little off track.
No, so basically just some of the things that you've learned is kind of what you said of just having a budget. So was that something and having a focus. So for someone who's just getting started, so they've got a budget, they've got a focus, but still it can be a learning curve of, okay, how do I actually do this in a way, there's things that you realize, okay, well, I had a focus and I tried doing this and that didn't quite work. And, because I think everyone's trying to accomplish in many ways the same thing of making the community better, but also, okay, if I want to, should I support a golf tournament that's doing this, or should I have my, sign hanging somewhere, or should I even worry about, having signage or any publicity for it? I don't know. Maybe those things are things that people can take into
I don't think you worry about it, but the nonprofits are pretty good at, if it's from a business standpoint. So I personally think there's a difference between sponsoring an event where that's literally advertisement and you are expecting your name, your company name to be mentioned or prominently displayed throughout the event, versus community giving, where you're just donating money. You're not expecting anything in return. But organizations and people are very good at saying thank you and being grateful. So,
that's actually, I think, a good distinction to make, because I think that was something I didn't quite understand, and I kind of had reservations about basically doing what was like a sponsorship, which is very different from a donation, where there's kind of an old proverb or verse or whatever that says, don't let your left hand know what your right's doing. So basically give in secret.
Yes.
Don't make a big show of it, which is different than sponsorship, where you're saying, okay, this is essentially advertising, but it's not maybe the same return as you might get from an agency, but there's still some recognition desired, which is for that. You're getting recognition from that versus, okay, if you're just giving behind the scenes, then you're kind of knowing for yourself that, hey, this is just something I'm doing, not really expecting anything. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've just kind of personally seen that I appreciate is when I hear the specific stories. Okay, I gave. Now, what was the impact made? Mm-hmm. Do I want to give to an organization who is, I give money and like, okay, I don't even know if that did anything mm-hmm. or if that made a difference versus when you give and know, wow, like because of my donation, I was able to help someone get off the streets, or I was able to, like with Rotary, we had an example where I think it was the Rise to Shine Foundation, where they're an individual where you give $600 and can put someone through an entire year of high school over in, was that in Kenya?
I believe it was Kenya.
Yeah, I think it was in Kenya. And you know exactly where your money is going and the impact that it had. And then being able to hear the stories in the video of them saying, thank you so much. We, now have education because of you.
Yes.
Versus if you give money and have no clue if it did anything or not, or if the check was even cashed, or, might have just gone to, restock the vending machine or something.
That's one of my favorite things about my position with the bank is I get to be out in the community and visiting with the nonprofits on a regular basis and hearing the stories and knowing that they are making a difference. It is important for the bank to be giving and to be involved, but we also recognize that it's the nonprofits, it's the people who are what I term it as boots on the ground that are meeting the specific needs.
Yeah.
And so it's really a very important partnership for community health.
Yeah. And what has it meant for you personally just to be a part of an organization that does that?
I love it. I think I was born with a servant's heart. And so to get paid to serve in the community and to be involved and to have conversations like this is, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's very fulfilling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's another story which makes it very evident that you have a servant's heart. But one thing I wanted to touch on is last year, there was a Christmas tree lighting that wasn't going to happen originally. And you kind of asked the question, hey, what is it going to take to get this off the ground? And most people said, myself included, because I think this was maybe I don't know if it was November or if it was October. And everyone was like, man, to pull something like this off, just it's too late. Like it's not even worth trying. And you said, no, we're going to make this happen. So can you share that story?
Yeah. So some people could look at it as a fault, but I do, number one, I tend not to look at things as what are the reasons why we can't do it. I definitely come from it from a perspective of how do we make this happen? If I feel strongly that it needs to happen, then I figure it out, to be honest. Some people probably are no longer my friends because I'll drag along anybody that's willing and able to make something happen. And as I was calling around to the different communities, getting dates for their Christmas celebrations, because we like to be involved in those events, I found that Newberg did not have anything planned. And we all know it's one of the largest communities within Yamhill County. So it felt unacceptable that they would not be planning a Christmas tree lighting. So I reached out to people that I know are community leaders here in town and, kind of try to figure out what was happening, and really nobody had any answers. So, and I think they really just lacked somebody who could take on the leadership role to make it happen. And so I went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting and pitched the idea and got the response that you talked about, where people were like, this is really great. And it would be really amazing if we could pull it off in this shorter period of time, because I really think we were looking at a 2 or 3 week window to make this happen. I also tend not to complicate things. I'm not a detail person. I can be if I have to be, if I know that other people require it. But I'm okay with going with the big picture and then trusting that the details are going to fill in. Again, some people can see that as a fault, but I see that as sometimes things get done that wouldn't normally get done if you had to have the details filled in first. So I'm like, okay, I need a tree. I need someone to move the tree. I need someone to plant the tree, and I need a place to put the tree, and I need someone to light the tree. Those like 5 things, that's pretty small to-do list in my world. So, and I knew that I knew that I had a tree on my property. I also learned that that was a little more complicated than I thought, because just because you have a tree doesn't mean you have easy access to the tree for the truck and for the tree cutter. And anyway, it worked out. And I come from a community of loggers, so I do tend to go on faith and just sort of throw up a little prayer. In fact, I literally did the day of the chamber meeting. I was a little discouraged, but not enough to go, okay, I tried, but I'm not going to do it. So I just said, Lord, if you want this town to have a Christmas tree, then you'll have to make it happen. And so then my next step in that prayer was, okay, I have a friend, Marty Hoffenbrettel. She's married to a man who has a logging truck, and she's the sister of a logger. I mean, I bet I know people who can cut and haul a tree for me. And sure enough, Marty connected me with, I feel bad, Shane Williams, I think. I can't remember the tree cutter now, but first name was definitely Shane. And then Dusty Arthur came and cut the tree. And then the city, like there was a very large group of city employees and chamber staff who really came together. And I don't intend to leave anybody out, because, you know, some months have gone by since then, but honestly, there was once they saw, oh, she has a tree, she has someone who can bring the tree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do this. Tualatin Valley Fire, I believe, had the ornaments, and First Federal was like, yep, we'll help make this happen. They did a sponsorship to pay for the tree to be hauled, and
the cultural
center said, absolutely, you can put the tree here for no charge, which normally they would be able to collect a fee for that kind of activity. And they said no charge. And then I don't know if anybody was there. I mean, I don't know if anybody listening was there at the celebration, but it was quite phenomenal. Yeah. And Rick, the city mayor, came, and it was
a Santa Claus riding on a fire truck.
Yes, and the high school choir team or like ensemble came and sang some carols, and families came and brought their children, and it was beautiful, and it was a positive moment in a time when we needed more positive moments. Yeah. So it was great. It was really great. Yeah, and I had the idea, and I think that I lit the torch for people, but I by no means carried the torch myself. Yeah. All I had to say was, I have a tree and I have someone who can get it there. And the city took on the rest, chamber, so many people.
And that's part of what impressed me so much, is the collaboration that came. And the amount of people that came together in the time that they did and just said, yes, we'll do this. I'll invite them and I'll let them know. And like everyone that came together all at once, kind of simultaneously, to put on an event like that was mind-blowing, honestly, because usually those kind of things are one person or one group is having to organize everything, but this was just one person had the idea and people latched on, and it just kind of spread out. So, and it was a great time. We'll see what this year looks like, but hopefully we'll plan a little bit earlier. But no, I think that was a fun story and one that a lot of people didn't know. They said, why haven't we heard about the Christmas tree lighting, before now? It's like, well, because it didn't exist before now.
Right.
But I think that was a fun story just about how, like you said, one person can have an idea and be a willingness, and kind of in the face of everyone saying no. And imagine if you had just said, well, I tried, versus, there were probably hundreds of people that went through there in that,
yes,
in such a short time. And even the promotion of it, that everyone promoted it and came up with flyers and all that stuff. So
yeah, because I thought even the day that it was delivered to the cultural center was kind of a little mini celebration. There were quite a few people there that showed up to witness and celebrate the fact that it had been
actually
delivered.
happened.
Yeah, it was really great.
Well, thank you again for your involvement in that and your initiative,
yes,
and donating a tree that probably was worth several $1,000s.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't care.
Sure.
It's, to me, it was a tree that it served a better purpose.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kathie, again for coming and sharing about that story and your work with First Federal and what it's like for other businesses to get involved. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to add for any businesses who have good hearts and, maybe one piece of motivation for them?
Ooh, one piece of motivation. I think just look around, ask yourself, how can I make a difference in my community if I'm not already? And, just balance that with earning a living, spending time with family. But, you and I talked about when we were leading up to this conversation about how different this city would look if the businesses that give back didn't do that.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of organizations, and I hesitate to name any just because I don't want anybody to feel left out. But, there are some local nonprofits that do incredible work, direct services for the people with the greatest need. And if we didn't have organizations that gave back, and even some who specifically set up foundations to make sure that the giving would go on beyond their lifetime, this city would look completely different.
Yeah.
It really would. And so I think you just have to look at that your giving is like nurturing a plant to make it grow and prosper. And
yeah. Well, amazing thoughts, amazing wisdom. Thank you, Kathie, for being involved in our community and for all that you do. I appreciate you, and I know many others do as well.
Thank you, Daniel. Right back at you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kathie. I hope you learned some new things. I hope you were inspired. And hopefully this is a catalyst for you to, if you're not already, find ways that you can get involved in the community, whether that's getting involved with your time, getting involved with your money, or getting involved just investing in the people here in town. It takes all of us to make a wonderful community. I know there's always negative things to think about, but just as easily to think about are all of the wonderful and amazing and positive things. So I hope you come away from this with a positive outlook on our town, and I hope you make the choice to be one of the people who makes this town a better place. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you all in the next episode.